Hi, welcome to Chart's free webinar series. Today we have empowering team members with the ability to speak English. And today, presenting this webinar today is Christine San Juan of Cafe Nero and CSJ Solutions.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everybody. How's it going? Thanks for taking the time to join me this afternoon to talk about English for our non-English workforce, which we have quite a few in this industry. So to give you a little background about me, I've been a Chart member for about over 12 years now, actually. Been very involved in many different things. It's my first webinar, so I'm very excited. As Tara said earlier, I have two jobs. I head up HR and training for a small startup in Boston called Cafe Nero, which is a European coffee house. And then I have a second job. I have my own consulting business where I offer HR and training consulting to a lot of small businesses that don't have HR or training support or staff available to them. So I try to tell people I have a very sick addiction to small restaurants and startups. There's something about the energy around that group that really excites me a lot. So we're going to get started today with our empowering team members with the ability to speak English. And I'm going to start by bringing you kind of through my experience through a couple of companies where I've actually been able to be part of empowering, seeing what English does for a workforce when they have access to it. All right. And as I was preparing, one of a quote that came to mind for me was, "You give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime." And I think that really kind of resonates for me when I think about why is it so important to empower an individual with the ability to speak English? Because I really do think that when they are able to speak English, and especially here in the United States, it opens up doors that they may not have been able to open prior to understanding being more conversational in English. So here's Cafe Nero. This is some of our locations here in Boston. We are, like I said, a very small company. But what I want to talk about Cafe Nero, because it does apply when it comes to empowering people to speak English. It's a European company, and so with the headquarters in London. And one of the requirements to work at Cafe Nero in London is the ability to be conversational in English. It would just be a basic conversation, but then you're able to be brought into the organization and really have access to a world of an opportunity from being a barista or even possibly considering being a manager. And I would say one of the successes that Cafe Nero worldwide has experienced as a result of that is having an 85% internal promotion rate from the barista line into the management program. Now, I'm not sure what that will look like here in the United States. The workforce is much different. However, we definitely are following that model of making sure that incoming baristas understand that they have access to a large opportunity for a career. The second organization that I worked with when it came to English was Boloco. These are some pictures here. This is actually up in the right-hand corner is the group of individuals my last year there that graduated the English program that they had in place, and I'm really happy to say that their English program still sits in place. Let's see, 4 years later, and I have to give props to the man down in the picture below. That's John Pepper. John Pepper is the CEO of Boloco. He's the founder. He was the main driver to bring English classes into the organization. It was a very heavily dominated Hispanic workforce. He truly believed very passionately that if you were able to teach the Hispanic population that worked at Boloco, he would be able to open doors. And he, you know, if they didn't stay at Boloco, that was okay with him. But if he was able to build that relationship and that attachment, there would be a very strong appreciation and affection for both John as well as the brand for what they were able to achieve based on their time at Boloco. And the last organization I worked for many years ago was Bertucci's. And that was probably my very, very first experience with an organization that introduced English classes for non-English speakers. And for that particular brand, it was Portuguese. Okay, so we had a very large kitchen population of Brazilians. And so allowing and bringing them together to learn and improve their English skills was a huge part. And I'm going to come back to these two brands as we go into kind of getting started and kind of successes and failures of both. So I wanted to with some industry statistics as far as kind of what's the climate, what's the workforce look like now, what is the predominant languages spoken. And so one of the things that I'm always really excited and very proud to still be such a big part of the industry is that we are still continue to be one of the largest employers outside of the government. In reviewing some of my notes for today, I went back and watched two really amazing videos that the NRA had put together about America's restaurants. They came out in 2009 and 2010. And I still watch them every once in a while, and I still get the chills as far as really just having this huge appreciation and love for this industry. We continue to be the dominant employer of minority managers, which when I found that statistic, I was like, wow, that was it's quite staggering when you think about it. But when you go into businesses, and I challenge you, when you go into businesses, look at the faces of the managers, and you'll probably start to see evidence of that we do provide such a huge opportunity in a management or career perspective for minorities in the U.S. 80% of our U.S. population speak English at home, all right, which leaves the 20%, what language are they? And so for today, 25% of the Hispanic Latino Americans speak both English and Spanish at home. But then the statistic gets smaller. Of those Hispanic and Latino Americans that speak English and or Spanish, only 15% speak English only. Okay, so choose to not speak their native language and just speak English only. Which I think if anybody's learning another language, whether you're learning English or you're learning how to speak Spanish, the more you're able to immerse yourself into the language, the more you're able to become proficient at it. So to see that 15% is a very small amount. So you may have people that come to work and speak English, but they're still speaking their native language at home, which definitely slows down that learning, that proficiency process. But again, going back to the minority population, it's set to grow 37% by the year 2020, and then 47% by the year 2050. So I know I'm sure I share the role and the position with many people here on this call that are recruiting, and recruiting is such a big part of who we are. And I would say this speaks to where our future workforce and our future managers will come from. And the largest minority groups in the U.S. are the African American, Hispanic, and the Asian American Pacific Islanders. So if you wanted to get started, so I'm going to kind of jump right in as far as what can you do or how do you get started. And I want to kind of put some questions and thoughts out there just to give us some common ground when you think about it. One of the things I was reading an article, it was talking about business is about relationships. But when you read through more of the article, it really kind of resonated that the point the article was trying to make was that business is about communication. It was about how virtually every aspect of the business, from acquiring and retaining customers to improving employee engagement and performance, really comes down to our ability to communicate and communicate well. When you think about communication and language skills, you want to be able to equip the employees with the proper skills to be able to compete successfully in our current economy, which continues to change. And I said it earlier about proficiency. It really is about proficiency, not being fluent in the language. And to kind of give us a definition about, when I say proficiency, I mean the ability to engage in common everyday conversations or handle basic interactions. Another little fact I came across was it talked about most common 1,000 words, and this is across every language, make up 85% of all conversations. And so that's why the proficiency, to be able to engage in common everyday conversations, is really it's kind of the first stepping stone in trying to empower a team member with the power to speak English in a conversation. And so if you're going to start to look at and explore how you're going to go about implementing an English program in your organization, you want to step back and look at how you're going to make the biggest impact. And so I want to put some questions out here for everybody to think about, and some will definitely resonate quickly to your organization. I would say one is the first is what's the current makeup of your non-English speaking? I can speak personally from my Cafe Nero experience and say, you know, traveling to Europe and London, it's a company that represents over 77 nationalities, so clearly there's quite a few non-English speaking. I come to the U.S. and we only have 4 little coffee houses. Most of our organization right now is all English speaking, and so for me, I look at, okay, we have an untapped market for our future, and that's where my head is when it comes to recruiting for Cafe Nero. Now, I would say, if you know, as you're looking and talking with your team members, or are you understanding what are their dreams? You know, not everybody wants to have a career in management in this industry. They want to do other things. In my experiences with Boloco, that's where I learned a couple of our burrito line workers were actually nurses and accountants in their previous work countries. But because their conversational English and their ability to understand how to navigate the system here in the U.S., they weren't able to get that education to translate into a job at that same level here. And so going back to what their dreams were not to become a manager for Boloco. However, they were absolutely candidates for our English program, and John was happy to have them in that program to be able to help them fulfill their dreams and be able to get back to what they had become so educated on. Another is, again, going back onto that career, is what have they done in their past? Okay, again, are they accountants? Are they nurses? Maybe they've owned restaurants. Again, this is about conversational English. Then you always have to go back to what are the needs of the organization. Where is your biggest pain point? Is it in recruiting? Is it in management? Is it in your frontline workers? Some may find it's in your headquarters, but what are the needs of the organization? Are you growing aggressively? And are you starting to realize that your bench is starting to dwindle? What are your current practices? When I say current practices, I think all around English. So again, not to keep going back to my experiences, but at Cafe Nero, one of the practices was you had to be able to speak English. You had to be able to communicate in a conversation during the interview. That was a requirement. Again, that's a European custom, so it may not fly legally here. But what are your practices when it comes to when someone comes in to apply? Are you allowed to bring someone in to translate? Do you translate current materials? And translating current materials can open up a huge kind of Pandora's box of what's available to be translated. Do you translate e-learning? Do you translate? And that would probably be more audio, or you could do it in or written, so they're seeing their native language and hearing it at the same time. Do you do more video-based training where the video is actual, say it's customer service, but what they're listening to the engagement in their native language? What are your current practices when it comes to inclusion for your non-English speaking team members? And then what are your available resources? And I'm going to get to resources when it means to you, okay, how do you pay for this? How can you find money to pay for this? But available resources within your organization. So you may have some managers now who are bilingual, and those bilingual managers can actually become mentors to other team members as you're trying to empower new line workers with becoming more conversational in English. Do you have available resources when it comes to if you were to hold classes at a central location? And I say this is I'll go back to the different companies, but Bertucci's, one of the things at the size it was when we implemented an English program, we had 125 locations. It was really difficult to find a central location, and it really impacted the success of the program and how team members were able to get there. So do you have those kind of resources available to you? Or do you have any video conferencing abilities around you? And then another big something that's going to impact your decision is how do you find the right business partner? And I cannot say enough of how this is critically important if you're going to be putting an English program into place, is finding that right business partner. And when I say right business partner, they have to really understand what your company is all about, what the vision is, what the mission, what are your dreams as an organization. And they also have to be equally as passionate about empowering your non-English speaking workers as you are. And I say that because from my past experience, I had a good and a bad experience with that. I would say at Bertucci's, we were first time starting it. I can't say that we were really overly thrilled or enjoyed or loved the relationship we had with our business partner. And as I look back on it, I have to say that that had to have an impact on the quality of the program that we designed and put in place, and also the ability, or I should say, the lack thereof, for that program to stay around. However, I had a great experience at Poloco, as they had selected a great business partner. I'll share who they were and how you can find them. And they continue to be the business partner for Poloco to this day. And one of the things that they were always very creative in trying to understand that it was a small company. Poloco only had 16 locations at the time. And so financial resources were a challenge, always. However, they got really creative in how they were able to offer what we called multi-level English classes, because we had so many different needs. Once you start it, and year on year, you start to realize there's a whole host of other needs that will speak to the different non-English speaking team members you have. And the last thing, if you want the biggest impact, I would say you need to understand, you need to know and identify and have a very strong champion. And who's that champion going to be in your organization? Again, to go back to the two organizations that we had at Poloco versus Bertucci's, Bertucci's didn't have a champion. I would say the champion was training. We were the training department. It was our program. It was our initiative. We were absolutely gung-ho about it, but I can tell you it was probably, looking at training and always partnering with operations. Looking back on it now, it was probably a big fail because we did not have a champion within the operations level, even right up to the CEO, and we had CEO changes, and so it really hurt that program that probably could have been still in place today. But then you look at Poloco, and I would say, and that's why I put John there, one of the things John really influenced in my career was being a champion for a cause. And there was no doubt in my mind, and if you met him today, there'll be no doubt in your mind that he is a champion for the cause of empowering non-English speaking workers. And he truly believes that if you're able to empower them with the power of English, they will achieve their dreams. So, resources. I said I'd get to resources as far as what do you have out there? Because again, I would say the average cost, and I've been away from this for about 2 years. However, the average cost to implement an English program, I would say just 2 levels, 2 types of classes, a beginner and an intermediate, would probably cost an organization anywhere somewhere between $45,000 and $70,000, really depending on. And you're like, wow, that's staggering. Again, it's resources, it's people that are teaching, so finding the teachers, it's materials, and I would say the length of time. I mentioned earlier, you want to be able to learn to speak another language. Immersion is absolutely one of the best ways to do it. So you want to learn how to speak Spanish, travel to a Spanish country, not have too many, and where you're forced to learn the language and be conversational, become proficient really fast. Well, in our everyday work day, we don't have the ability to immerse ourselves. So part of the program to be successful needs to be frequency. So it can't just be once a week. Our program at Poloco is twice a week for, I believe it was 2 hours. And so being able to set that, so that is really what drives that figure and becomes much larger. So here are a couple of resources that you have available to you that I wanted to share. One that I found was the American Hospitality Academy. And one of the things it's an online program that they offer. And again, this might be for an individual or group of individuals that have basic English. This is not for anybody who does not speak English. There needs to be a baseline of conversational English available. But it actually takes them through, and they're actually awarded a hospitality in English and communication certificate, which I think would be quite valuable to a team member, manager, as they're trying to move up in the world and make a life for themselves. The second resource that's available out there is JVS, and that stands for Jewish Vocational Services. And JVS was the partner at Poloco. And one of the things I did find, I went and researched, JVS has offices throughout the entire United States. I worked with the one in Boston, which is the Northeast market. They have a Midwest market, They have a Southeast and a Southwest market. And they offer not just English classes, that's one of the programs that we worked with them, but when you partner with JVS, you partner with, and they actually will open your eyes and your team members' eyes to all of the resources that they have when it comes to job and skill training and careers. So they have an entire GED program. They have a program called Bridges to College, which I was really excited. Again, remember we had some team members at Beloco that were educated, and so we had some that just needed some additional basic math or some more conversational English to be able to move them into that transition phase so they can actually start to acquire that certification that they held in their own countries. So Bridges to College was a way to get you the basic skills to be able to start taking some of the exams when it comes to getting your certificate, your education from another country, getting acknowledged here in the U.S. And I truly cannot say enough about JVS. Another resource, and again, a resource for a lot of different reasons, would be the MSHA, which is the Multicultural Food Service and Hospitality Alliance. That is, the founder is Jerry Fernandez. If you have not met him, I believe they are a partner or sponsor of CHART. So you'll see Jerry every once in a while, but he's based here in New England, but extremely passionate about culture inclusion, diversity, and his company has lots of resources when it comes to statistics and or programs or speaking. So I always say, I'd like to put out there, I'm like, that's definitely an opportunity for you to look at as a resource. And the last one, I think sometimes when we think Rosetta Stone, we instantly think of other languages, but Rosetta Stone actually also has an English program that can also be implemented. And again, every organization, depending on where you're going to launch and who you're going to go after, these all kind of offer different levels of what it would cost, I would say. So from something very small, I would say JVS will probably be up on the higher. That's definitely something you're going to work with JVS. They're going to want to work with you for quite some time. They're not just going to do like, let's just do this 1 year and go on our merry way. And so, again, as I said, all this costs money, and I would say costs money whether it's the time and the wages for your team members coming, or the actual money to actually develop the entire program. So here are a couple of examples, of where you can go look for not just money, but also if you can't afford it, but maybe to send them to a training program that's run through your state's labor division. So we have the community-based job training grants. If you just do a Google search, you can host some articles and also leads on where in the world you can actually access, because they are different depending on where you are in the U.S. The next two, the Career One Stop and the Workforce 3-1, those are more with your Department of Labor. And those are more training-based, but they do offer what they call, I think it's basic adult education skills, where it is conversational English, it is basic math, and those are programs that they offer. So you might not be able to do a full-on program, but you might have one rising star that you've identified that you might be able to afford to send them to one of these training programs. And the last one is the Workforce Development Grants. And I would say there's quite a bit of money when it comes to grants. I've worked with the workforce development grants from two companies. That was how Beloco and Bertucci's both were able to launch their English programs. And in Massachusetts specifically, and can't speak to every other state, but it's a staggering amount of money that's available in workforce training grants for organizations. Primarily they like to work with small organizations that don't seem to have the resources and ability to implement a program like this. When you go to a workforce development, a lot of states that are offering them, they offer a workshop or a symposium where they introduce the grants, what they are, there's different levels, they introduce the application process and what it looks like, but then they also are the conduit to link you to partners who can help you write the grants, because I don't know about you, I'm not a grant writer, and they are quite intense and very specific. But they have the ability to direct you to partners that can help you write the grants that upon getting the grant, so receiving the grant, help you through the entire process of documenting the program, because that's the unfortunate side of grants. They are quite administratively heavy. However, if you can persevere and you have enough help and support to do it, the results and the reward are absolutely worth it. And so I always want to, like, when you talk about having a program like this, people say, "What? Of course, it's going to cost money. What does this look like to the bottom line? How can this truly impact us?" And so I wanted to give you a couple of ideas of where you can go to measure the success of your program for English. I would say hands down would be customer service. Any kind of customer service metrics that you currently collect would be a direct, you should be able to see a direct connection from an improvement. If your frontline workers or your manager are able to proficiently communicate, remember just basic conversations, and are able to provide a higher level of customer service as a result of it, I would say that the program starts to pay for itself. You can look into safety, okay? Look into your risk management, and are some of your accidents linked to some of your non-English speaking staff? And is it a matter of them not understanding the program or how to handle slips and trips and falls or burns and cuts, all the different host of safety issues we deal with in the industry every day. But if you were able to reduce your accidents within your organization, again, you're going to be able to see the results, and the dollars will start to shift and pay for the program itself. Productivity is definitely a way to measure, okay, from operations at the unit level. And I would say the next two, retention and employee engagement, those are probably two that I would go to, especially from my time at Boloco, is looking at, and I can say, even if I was to go into one of their shops today, I would say more than 50, I would say 75% of the staff is still there, still know them, still in the English program, moving on, and that links next to the employee engagement. I would say at both organizations where I was where we implemented English programs, I saw a huge culture, I wouldn't say cultural shift, but it was a cultural dive that the employees that come into these programs truly form a family. And they form a family, again, if you look at the Hispanic culture, they form a family from no matter where they are, if they're from Guatemala, if they're from Colombia, El Salvador. They come together and form one Hispanic community and welcoming others. I mean, like the English program we had at Boloco, yes, I said had many Hispanic, but there were Asian team members that were a part of this, and so this was a universal English program. You didn't have to be Hispanic to be in the English program. English was what was taught, and what they would do is match where your level was of learning, or I should say of skill, proficiency. And you would actually so you would see them celebrate. So at Bertucci's, one of the things I saw when they came together, they started coming together before the class even started. And they would all come together and they would do potluck dinners every week. Now these programs run minimum 15 weeks at a time. They'll have a break and then they start up again. And so continually, week after week, would come early. Each one of them would bring something of the dinner, and they'd sit and they'd have dinner, and so you start to see that engagement and that connection forming. I would say at Boloco, they get together outside of the class regularly. They celebrated Christmas. They celebrated so many different things. They celebrated each other. Okay, so when we had graduation at the end of the program was a very big deal, and they were just as proud as could be to have seen their improvement in the year, and I would say the results of their hard work. And the last one, again, going back to an operations, would be guest count. Anytime we're able to see an improvement of guest count as a result of any initiative we're taking, I would say that is a great metric that you can use when it comes to results. So I wanted to turn it over here at this point to Six. I did just talk about a lot of things, and to see if there were any questions that I can answer specifically about empowering your team members to speak English.
Okay, sorry, Christine, I had to take you off mute. Well, I do have two questions here. The first one is there any value to implementing language programs other than English?
Mm-hmm. And I would say, oops, I'm echoing.
Oh, you know what? Sorry, because I
Okay, there you go. I would say absolutely. You know, you can look at this in two different ways. Some will say that it's if you are teaching English to your non-English speaking team members, it's not a very progressive view. And I guess to some point I would say yes, I would agree with that. However, if you are a company that is a global brand, all right, and has reached past the United States, then absolutely there is something to be said for bringing in the other language. So where you're working and actually teaching those languages to the team members. So say you have a Salesforce team that's going to be working in China, absolutely teaching them Chinese would be huge when it comes to development, so market expansion, but also from a productivity and collaboration perspective. So this is just my perspective when it comes to really empowering non-English speaking workers to be able to launch their lives further than where we currently see every single day.
Okay, another question just came in that said, when do these classes generally take place?
The English classes?
It didn't actually say. It just said, when do these classes generally take place? So I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, sure. So I would say for Boloco, they took place after. So again, going back to resources, what we had is we had one of our stores closed early. It was on like a Monday through Friday, and so they closed at 5. And so we used their restaurant inside for one of our locations. The other 2 classes were held. We had many training rooms. One was actually at our headquarters, and one was behind another shop. And they all took place. I want to say they started at 4:30 or 5, which was after the morning shift. It definitely, was a struggle for some if they have childcare issues. But again, I can't say enough about JVS. JVS partnered with us and helped us find childcare so that we were able to keep some of the team members that had childcare issues. If they were able to get out of work at 3, go home and get their kids and come back into the city for English, and then we found it was a local Y that had a childcare program that was after. So that was, and it was twice a week. I want to say it was Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Bertucci's was similar. It was twice a week. One was actually a little bit more at night. That was the one that was in the city. We had one, I believe the Copley location at the time had a training room downstairs. Again, but both classes for both brands were 2-hour sessions, and they were twice a week.
Okay, the next question is, did you find any success with sending people to community learning areas, providing resources for them to learn, but not actually at the property?
I had one at Boloco, and he was Nepalese, and so he lived up in New Hampshire. And so for him to come down into Boston was just, it was a physical distraction, so it wasn't something he could do. So I worked with him, and he found a community college, I believe, that was up in the Concord, New Hampshire area that offered English, and we paid for it for him. And so he enrolled in that program. I've since lost touch with him, but he actually was he was I want to say he was a shift leader at the time, and worked really hard and again, the different levels where they are in the organization really kind of told where their needs were. So some of our needs expanded past just conversational English, and each year that it was offered, we added more into it. So my last year with Boloco, we had added it was a general manager tutoring program specifically targeted to help improve their written English skills. So when you think about a store manager trying to do reviews or even typing emails, and that was a peer tutoring group that we implemented in the last. But yes, outside of it, I would say the best suggestion I can give is, if you have someone who can't get to your site and you're going to use a community program, have them do some of the research and the legwork so that they have some skin in the game. Because this individual, he found the school, he went to the schools, he talked to the advisors, and so he was the one who selected that program. And I just looked to say what was the curriculum, what was the credentials for the teachers that were working with him. And so I would definitely say that for sure.
Okay, and the last question, and you may have actually already answered this. Have you ever worked with a one-on-one English tutor?
A little bit, I would say, and there's actually, so I didn't put them in because there's so many independent English one-to-one tutors that are available out there. But my last, I would say, 6 months, I had been talking with, she was a woman, she was a consultant on her own that was available to do one-to-one tutoring, which we were looking at. And unfortunately, I didn't stay there any longer, so I wasn't able to put it in place. But they are there, and I would say I would not just, I would look at everything. Look at every single option that's available to you and you may find that it's going to be kind of a hodgepodge of several different things because the needs of your organization and those individuals that are trying to acquire the English proficiency are going to be very different. It's hard to be able to offer a lot of different things to a group of people. So sometimes you might want to look at the one-to-one tutoring. I would say, just another thinking about this, was that we had, it was something I wasn't, for an individual who may want to become proficient in English, the ability for them to actually show up is another challenge. And so JVS, again, it was with that program, but they went and found, because there was an individual, he was too proud to sit at the table with the other students in the English classes. And so Colleen, she was our main contact at JVS, she found an independent tutor that would meet with him, I think his name was Jose, and meet with him one-on-one on the same day. So he still had to come, but he would meet downstairs. So we had a meeting room that there was a shop downstairs. He would meet one-on-one with that private tutor. And what the whole point was to get him comfortable to be able to move into the larger group, because that's where he was going to be able to improve his English skills exponentially versus the one-on-one tutoring. But we did that for a temporary period of time, and it was quite successful.
Okay, I did get one last question that just came in. Is there a required commitment for the team members who are participating in these classes? I would be concerned that team members might sign up but not follow through or complete the course.
That's a great question. I didn't talk about this, but I would say when Boloco launched their English program, it was before it, over the summer, was a pilot program, and the pilot program was a joint financial share, for lack of a word for it. And so what ended up happening is Boloco paid for the English program for the 15 weeks over the summer, and the employees, their time and commitment, so they didn't get paid for it. And what was, again, it was testing to see, like, what is their commitment level? Because, yeah, you may find some people that will sign up and not come. So there needs to be some skin in the game. And so that pilot program launched. So that whole group was our very first English session when the grant funds started to come, when we set up our official English program. And it was kind of like it was a launching pad. So they had to give a little, we gave a little as well. And you have to be able to put some sort of skin in the game. The second part of that, I would say, going back to making sure you have the right partner, again, Colleen and her group at JVS, she would go, and if they weren't attending, if there was a gap in attendance, she'd go see them and work, and she'd find out, and she'd talk to them, and she was just really assertive on that, and she wouldn't let them make excuses for why they couldn't. Will you lose people? You will, but the majority, if there's a kind of a pilot program or prerequisite for them to be there, they'll be engaged and they'll attend. And again, if your partner is on board with you as well.
Okay, Christine, thank you so much. We're going to wrap it up here. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. For anyone who's online, I know some of you had a little trouble logging in and you might have logged in a little late. This whole session has been recorded and will be posted on the chart website within an hour.
Thank you.
Thank you all.